was your most embarrassing visit to the doctor?
This happened my freshman year of college, so needless to say my diet wasn't great. My boyfriend and I were house sitting for a friend, and on the third night there I was awoken to terrible stabbing pain in my stomach. I tried to get to the bathroom but ended up collapsing on the floor in a near fetal position, barely able to breathe and sweating profusely. My boyfriend heard me fall and got up to see what was wrong. I couldn't speak, the pain was so horrible, and I was having a hard time breathing, so he painstakingly led me to our friend's car and drove me to the hospital. At this point, I was in so much pain from him not really knowing how to drive a stick and jerking and stalling along the way that he had to go in and ask for assistance. I was loaded onto a gurney and strapped in because the outstretched position nearly killed me with pain, and I started lashing out. After the doctor cut off my clothes and saw no outward injuries on my stomach, he began to compress my stomach, which nearly made me pass out. He thought my appendix must have burst or that I had a ruptured intestine. I was given morphine and finally got some relief. They rolled me down the hall and took some x-rays of my stomach. To get the x-rays back took a while, so while we were all awaiting the pics, I was given more morphine. Eventually, a big woman with a Texas accent entered the room and exclaimed, "You're full of shit." "What?" I asked, completely confused and holding my stomach. "I'm serious, I'm in a lot of pain." "Oh, no doubt," she said, and pulled out an x-ray of my stomach. "See all that white in your guts? You are literally full of shit." I have never seen someone so full of shit in my life. My boyfriend erupted in laughter, and the nurse was trying her best to hide her amusement as she had been tending me for hours and knew I was obviously in a lot of pain. I groaned, but I was a bit amused myself. It was pretty funny, after all. I asked the doctor what they were going to do about it, and she said they were going to do an enema and see how that went. I was given laxatives and a ton of water and told to wait 20 minutes. I could feel my stomach rumbling a bit at this point, and it hurt me a lot when it did. Eventually a nurse wheeled in what looked like a dominatrix sex rack, complete with ankle and wrist straps. My boyfriend again erupted into laughter, again. I was not amused this time. I was starting to get embarrassed, so before we began I asked that he leave. He pretty much begged me to let him stay, but I had none of it. After he left, the nurse wheeled in what looked to be some sort of futuristic pressure washer. I was pretty much right. She strapped my ankles and wrists to the rack in an upright position and proceeded to insert the tube into my ass. It was uncomfortable and cold, but I'm gay, so it was like, whatever. She then turned it on, and like the first mate on the Titanic, began to slowly increase power and pressure. I could feel and see my stomach begin to inflate slightly, and oh mercy, it hurt like nothing else. It felt like knives were pushing out of me now. Ever so slowly, I cried out, but she insisted on more power and I kept filling up like a balloon, hollering in agony. After a minute or so of constant pressure, she turned it off and told me to clench up because she was removing the tube. I wanted nothing more than to do the opposite, but I assumed she knew what she was doing and followed orders. She then attached another tube to a hose and inserted it. This one was much bigger and the lube was cold as hell, but I'm gay so it was still whatever. She then proceeded to hoover my mother effing insides. After 30 seconds, I heard a hum. I asked her what the problem was and she told me nothing was coming out, but begged her not to pressure wash my guts again. At this time the doc came in as she was pulling out my butt plug and informed me that the shit packed in my colon was too wide and girthy to be machine animated out. She was going to have to do this manually. She had the nurse grab a bucket, a plain white janitor's bucket, and put it underneath me. She then put on latex gloves, completely lubed up her hands, and began what I consider to be some sort of medical finger bang to loosen me up. After a while of this, I was trying to keep my mind focused on something other than this butch PE teacher-looking southern woman giving me ass play legally, so I wasn't keeping track of time. She brought out a stretching device and began to open it with it. At this point, I felt so ashamed of myself, but I was also doped out of my mind. The pain began to come back in full force and I started shouting for more painkillers, but Lady MacGyver down there told me they couldn't administer more because it would stop me up even more. I was just going to have to deal with it until they could unclog me. So I endured as I was being stretched. It hurt like hell in my hole too. I felt her fingers in there and she told me to push. So I pushed. I pushed so hard I felt like the blood vessels in my face were popping. My head started to bang. I was pushing hard and she was telling me to push more. I must have been screaming my head off. I can't imagine I wasn't. Finally, I felt something give in. She told me to push more and I did. I could feel things moving. So I pushed some more. After a minute, I finally felt myself deflating as water and poo debris tumbled out into the bucket. It all happened very quickly after that. I was unobstructed and gushing hot lava a minute later and finally felt complete. Utter blissful relief. I was told after I woke up in the hospital 8 hours later, around 5 p.m., that the doc literally helped deliver my shit child. I had never been more embarrassed in my life.